welcome to the UN Brief. This week we interview Ambassador Martin Frick, who was just appointed Director of the World Food Programme Global Office in Berlin. We spoke about the highlights of the Conference of Parties, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching the UN Brief. Can you tell us a little bit more about the discussions this week?
Well, thank you. I have been in the COP process for many years, and I've never seen a COP, a climate COP, that is so strongly focusing on food and food production. And I do believe it is absolutely essential because we have been discussing in the framework of the Food System Summit, food, as the name says, as a system. So if you put everything in, cold chains, transport, down to transport of people who are working in food systems, we are way above 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's about time to look into food systems. But what I find so exciting about food system is it's not only a big source of greenhouse gas emissions, it's actually also a tremendous source of mitigation. You can really reduce emissions by better agriculture. And it's an imperative to build resilience and to adapt to climate shocks, as we already have now more than 1/10 of the world population in a severe food insecure state.
What's your perception of the participants this year? It seems like we had a lot more banking sector, finance sector that was participating. For the first time, they are looking at investments as a very important actor in this search for mitigating the impacts of climate change.
We have seen over the last month the impacts of climate change really hitting home. So everybody by now understands the central importance of addressing the climate crisis right away. We cannot plan for decades in the future. We need to invest now. We need to change our business models now. And I think at this COP, business is really there prominently and often leading with the pledges. But I also want to highlight one fact, which is I have never seen so many indigenous peoples and indigenous people representatives and young people at a COP. And I think that goes in the right direction. Now, we need more of that because food systems are so important. And so I hear more and more voices asking for a dedicated food systems day at COP27 next year.
It seems like 80% of the biodiversity we have in the planet is actually looked after by indigenous people. That was one of the numbers that surfaced. So indeed, we need their cooperation, we need to focus more because they already have many of the solutions we are looking for. So in terms of restoration of systems, of ecosystems like reforestation, which is one big program of the United Nations Environment Program.
Two things here. One is that one central article is still outstanding. That is Article 6 about carbon markets. And I'm carefully optimistic from what I hear that we could solve that. That is important because this is the central bit on all the offsetting to really make it meaningful and working. And this is super important for everything land use because it could present a chance for the poorest people, if we get it right, to get credits for doing the right type of land use. And that's my second bit. Reforestation is fantastic, but you need to do it right. It's got to be the right species of trees. It has to be in harmony with the existing or the lost ecosystem that is about to be restored. And very importantly, it has to work for people. You cannot just put trees somewhere and ignore the people who live on the land. But if we understand trees and forests as part of the food systems, which indeed they are, not least because forests are enormous buffers of water, then we can really bring lasting change, not only to the ecosystem, but most importantly to the people who are on the ground, who are suffering, and which we should never forget are the ones who have contributed least to the problem.
And one last question regarding oceans too. Oceans also were very important in the conversations.
Absolutely. For me, one of the key outcomes of the UN Food System Summit is really an increased focus on oceans and on blue food. So food from the oceans, not only fish, but also seaweed, for example, which is in itself a fantastic climate solution. It has gained more prominence at the COP, and there is many good reasons for oceans to be much more center stage, because it is one of the stabilizers of the climate. It's a giant carbon sink. Also, I don't like the expression because it's a living ecosystem, but it's absolutely essential for our survival. So good development also here when it comes to paying attention to oceans, particularly for small island developing countries who, as we know, are on the front lines of climate change.
Thank you for watching the UN Brief. I'm your host, Maya Plintz. And don't forget to subscribe. We are funded by viewers like you.